The process of decomposition of the body in the first 40 days after burial. The first days after burial are a true test for the human body, which begins its decomposition process. The third day marks the beginning of these changes. Cellular structures lose viability. Body heat drops sharply, and temperatures equalize with the surrounding environment. Oxygen disappears, and anaerobic decomposition begins. Bacteria in the body release gases, methane and hydrogen sulfide, causing a distinctive bloating sensation and an unpleasant odor. The skin's color soon changes. It becomes paler, then takes on a reddish tint, caused by increased pressure in the veins and capillaries. These processes, though seemingly simple, indicate profound biochemical and physicochemical changes occurring in the body. Unfortunately, or perhaps a natural mystery, these very gases are the ones that signal the onset of active destruction. Hydrogen sulfide creates a characteristic odor that can already be detected around the grave. Furthermore, due to microbial activity, increased internal pressure in the tissues causes the skin to blister and crack, and internal organs begin to lose their integrity. Bacteria exist that, by mercilessly breaking down proteins and lipids, provoke the formation of large quantities of gas and release a variety of chemical compounds. The body begins to lose its strict contours, transforming into something new, but still far from the final form of mineralization. On the 9th day after burial, the stage of active decomposition begins, when the process enters a phase of accelerated decay. Bacterial proliferation enters an intense stage. The skin visibly cracks, and muscles and tissues fill with gases, creating bubbles and contributing to the formation of characteristic swellings. During this period, various microorganisms, bacteria and fungi, release a wide range of biochemicals that participate in the destruction of cells. Connective tissue begins to disintegrate, and the body gradually loses its shape. Under the influence of moisture and soil acidity, bone tissue becomes mobile, becoming vulnerable, but still retaining its original structure. By this time, the body is far removed from its previous appearance. Its appearance becomes completely unchanged and unlike its life. Gas production becomes so intense that it causes not only decomposition, but also a certain amount of pressure in the tissues, causing them to rupture and visibly bulge. Interestingly, these processes not only significantly alter the physical characteristics of the remains, but also reveal the complex stages of transformation of biomaterial into simpler compounds, which then take the form of minerals. After a few weeks, preparations begin for the next stage, mineralization. Those who study these processes note that the first 40 days after death are crucial for the body's transformation into a new form of matter. Soft tissues are destroyed, and the body's internal chemistry undergoes dramatic changes. Moisture present in the soil, combined with microbial activity and the chemical composition of the environment, creates conditions for the gradual dissolution of tissues. Changes in temperature and pressure within cells facilitate a rapid transition from the initial stages of decomposition to more complex phases that determine the organism's fate in the soil for long periods. This process conceals many mysteries, many of which scientists are only beginning to understand. Thus, the first 40 days represent a complex, multi-stage biochemical process. This is the time when the body begins its return to nature. It ceases to be flesh and blood and becomes an integral part of the ecosystem. The intense interaction of bacteria, fungi, and microorganisms leads to the transformation of complex organic substances into simpler ones. This allows the insatiable earth to absorb the remnants of life and prepare the ground for the next form of existence. Decomposition is not simply destruction, but the beginning of a new natural cycle. From the first days after death to the subsequent mineralization stage, the body changes at the molecular level. In the following chapters, we will examine in detail how these processes continue after the 40th day, delving into biochemistry and the ecological consequences, revealing the full complexity and beauty of life's transformation into Earth. The transformation of the body into a skeleton and the mineralization stage. Following the active destruction of soft tissue, a stage begins when the human body increasingly loses its original shape. Muscles and internal organs undergo steady decomposition, their mass significantly diminishing, giving way to the ongoing process of mineralization. This transition from living tissue to mineral sediment is important for a full understanding of the transformations the body undergoes underground. Bacterial activity here does not wane. On the contrary, it spreads to new areas, contributing to the rapid disintegration of organic structures. The energy reserves within the tissues are almost exhausted, and deep destruction of the connective tissue begins. Meanwhile, other organisms, such as worms and insects, actively participate in this process, helping to accelerate decomposition. Their biological activity ensures the mechanical processing of remains, creating more space for microorganisms and other bacteria. The mobility of these creatures influences the penetration of oxygen, despite limited access, maintaining biochemical reactions at a new level. This union of micro and macroorganisms illustrates the uniqueness of the soil ecosystem, which turns the body into a source of nutrients necessary to sustain life. Bones gradually undergo changes, despite lasting longer than soft tissue. Soil moisture and acidity contribute to the softening and gradual dissolution of bone minerals. Water, penetrating bone structures, leaches calcium and other minerals that give bone its hardness. This process makes bones more brittle, creating favorable conditions for further destruction. Changes in the chemical composition of bone tissue alter its strength, which is important to consider when studying long-term decomposition processes in different soil conditions. Plant roots play a surprising role in bone breakdown. By wrapping around bone debris, roots can penetrate microcracks and widen them, promoting mechanical destruction. Moreover, the roots secrete organic acids that accelerate the dissolution of minerals in the bones. This interaction occurs in close collaboration with microorganisms, creating a complex effect on the decomposition process. Plants, thus, actively participate in the processing of waste, turning it into useful elements for their own development, closing the natural cycle of life. By 6 months, only bones remain, the framework of the human body, which gradually loses its integrity. Despite their initial strength, bones become vulnerable to prolonged exposure to moisture, microorganisms, and chemicals. As a result, their structure weakens, ultimately leading to complete destruction. This period can be compared to the final stage of transformation, when increasingly hard materials exhibit increasing brittleness, heralding the onset of mineralization. Researchers note that the rate of destruction depends on many factors, including climate and soil composition. Mineralization begins to actively shape the future state of the remains, converting them from an organic to a mineral phase. This process involves the chemical restructuring of bone tissue, with the formation of minerals that gradually replace the original substance. Essentially, the remains of the body at this stage become part of the geological layer, merging with the earth. The minerals help preserve the shape of the bones for a while, But the ultimate goal of this process is the return of the elements to the natural cycle. This stage is important for understanding how the body transitions into a new form of existence. The influence of microorganisms during the mineralization process cannot be underestimated. They not only break down organic matter, but also facilitate the formation of minerals through complex biochemical reactions. Fungi and bacteria present in the soil actively interact with bone tissue, creating favorable conditions for new life. This stage emphasizes the unified cycle of matter and energy in nature, demonstrating that even after death, the body remains a dynamic system. This approach changes the traditional idea of death, showing it as part of an endless chain of existence. Along with mineralization, the remains are gradually incorporated into the soil ecosystem. Bones become a source of nutrients for fungi and microorganisms, which in turn support healthy soil and the development of vegetation. It is here that the intimate connection between the human body and the surrounding nature manifests itself. This process can be considered the final stage of the profound metamorphosis that began at the very beginning of burial. Over time, these transformations affect not only the physical structure of the remains, but also the biochemical metabolism of the soil. It remains to be emphasized that knowledge of this stage reveals important ecological functions of decomposition. They help us understand not only the biological, but also the philosophical meaning of the death process. The human body, having undergone complex transformations, serves as the basis for new forms of life, closing the circle of the life cycle. It is precisely this perspective that allows us to view death not as an end, but as a profound transformation. Significance. Everything that happens plays a role in maintaining the balance and diversified development of nature around us. These changes are preparation for the next stage, when the remains become part of the soil in a more organic and mineral form. As minerals accumulate and bones soften, the body prepares for its final merging with the environment. These metamorphoses are no longer visible to the naked eye, but they are of great significance for ecology and archaeology. The period after 6 months of burial will reveal the fate of the remains and their impact on the soil and living organisms. This is precisely what we will discuss in the final part of our story, revealing the unique cycle of life and death, interaction of remains with soil and the natural cycle of life. A year passes after burial, and the human body undergoes a remarkable transformation, becoming not just remains, but part of a complex and living ecosystem. Bone remains, which until recently provided a strong support for organisms, now slowly interact with the soil. This process marks a key stage in the transformation of bodily matter into a new source of life, accessible to a multitude of microscopic and macroorganisms. Bacteria and fungi living in the soil continue to actively affect bones. They produce enzymes that promote the breakdown of the mineral matrix, leading to the gradual leaching of calcium and phosphates. This in turn makes bones more porous and brittle. Soil worms and small insects are particularly important, penetrating the remains, accelerating mechanical disintegration. They grind the organic material, turning it into a finely porous mass, significantly enriching the soil. Amazingly, this invisible process conceals a powerful biochemical cycle. The organic matter, having absorbed human life energy, now gradually decomposes, releasing nutrients into the soil, which become the basis for plant growth. Thus, carbon, nitrogen, and trace elements are returned to the cycle of life. The fauna and flora that rely on this flow actively maintain the ecosystem's balance, turning death into a kind of creative act. The soil ecosystem resembles a network of interdependent organisms whose very existence ensures the regeneration of nature. Microorganisms serve as the first links, initiating decomposition. Secondary agents, such as worms and insects, grind the material, and plants absorb the released elements for growth. Thus, the body, once the repository of the individuality and memory of a living person, becomes part of the complex mechanism that sustains life on the planet. In this cycle, death takes on a different meaning. Not a loss, but a transition to a new form of existence. Participation in the endless rotation of elements. Every atom previously inhabiting the body finds new uses in plants, animals, and even the atmosphere. The cup of life constantly fills and overflows, forcing us to rethink traditional views on the end of human existence. This is a return to nature with profound philosophical meaning. Understanding this process becomes especially important because it reminds us of our inseparable unity with the surrounding world. The body's legacy left in the earth is transformed into a force that supports the growth and development of new organisms. This serves as a reminder that it is impossible to exist in isolation from nature, that humans are part of the great circle of the biosphere. Thus, the annual cycle of decomposition is not simply a physical fact, but a historical moment when individual history merges with the biological history of the Earth. The process is extremely complex, encompassing many stages from cellular breakdown to mineralization, and the gradual transition to supporting life processes, making it a perfect illustration of permanent rebirth. Understanding the cycle means seeing death not as an enemy, but as an important participant in the balance of nature. A surprising perspective opens up for researchers and ordinary people alike. Perceiving death as both an element of passing and simultaneously the birth of something new, as human participation in the constant movement of matter and energy. Remains become not just an object of study, but a connecting element between the past and the future. Ultimately, the story of decomposition teaches us patience and an understanding of eternal change. Becoming part of the soil and organisms, the body continues to influence the world, sustaining life at the microscopic level and participating in global processes. It is this knowledge that allows mortality to acquire new meaning, adding depth to the familiar rituals of farewell and respect for the departed. It is in this spirit that we can continue our search for answers about the nature of life and death, delving deeper into the biochemical changes and interactions that occur after the body's transition to the earth. The next stage is dedicated to an even deeper understanding of the mysteries and secrets surrounding this complex, yet incredibly important process.